I Was a Black GI, a retrospective, is a live in-person panel discussion at the Wisteria Hearst on scheduled for July 9 from 1 to 3 p.m. Mr. Doug Griffin is the person who organized this. You're a veteran who grew up in New York and you're going to be the moderator. What what was the
Could I
plan?
make a change here?
Yeah, definitely make it.
Actually, I grew up in Holyoke. I was born in New York, but I grew up in Holyoke.
Okay. And what was the motivation behind putting together, organizing this panel discussion?
Well, Penny and I were talking earlier in the year, and she mentioned, uh, excuse me, that she was putting together a program this summer
Hmm.
regarding the military,
Hmm.
especially Holyoke based,
Hmm.
and um, we were in part as when we were in the discussion, she mentioned the fact about Black veterans that I know, and I said that's an experience that I think is very important because it's not known by a lot of individuals. And Black veterans uh, have had a large part in the different wars that this country has fought for a number of years, going back to the Revolutionary War, actually. Um, and I just felt that it was something that I felt was important for people to know about, and not necessarily the combat aspect of it. My father was a World War II veteran, fought in combat in Europe and stuff. Uh, and it's not so much that we see the movies and about combat and everything, and some very good movies about it. Um, but I was more interested in getting out a lot of the impact that the veterans, that the soldiers had to deal with on army bases, on what their spouses had to deal with, what it was like for them when they weren't in combat. And there were a number of people, and what we had tried to do, because it was the program that she was putting together for the summer was based in Holyoke, and she was dealing with some other veterans at the War Memorial and other areas. That I tried to keep it with people who had a Holyoke base. I'm a member of Bethlehem Baptist Community Church in Holyoke, and so most of the people on the panel, if not all of us on the panel, are members of Bethlehem Baptist Community Church. I know there are other veterans groups that are in Springfield and other areas, but we were trying to keep it as a Holyoke-based program. But
Mr. Griffin, I'm sorry to interrupt. What is
that's all right.
you're a veteran, from which branch?
I was in the U.S. Army. I was a medic.
Oh, what's your experience? What was your experience like?
My
I know it's a
experience,
big question, but just
no,
highlight.
my experience was okay. I had when I was stationed, I was stationed in New Jersey for most of the time,
Hmm.
and I did my basic training in New Jersey. I had an experience there while I was in basic training, uh, where this was in 1964, and there was a lot of things, as you are well aware, there were a lot of things going on in the outside world,
Hmm.
and a number of individuals. We would go down to the when we had the opportunity, we would go down to the base exchange,
Hmm.
and there were. It just seemed as though um, there was some conflicts about what kind of music would be played. A lot of the white trainees wanted country music, and they would go down and they would kind of like dominate the jukebox.
Hmm.
And one particular afternoon, we got there first,
Hmm.
and we started playing some Motown.
Hmm.
Well, when they walked in, there became a big standoff, and it got to the point where there was almost, I suppose you could call it a small riot,
Hmm.
um, which was put down. I think everybody was frustrated for being in basic, but that had a lot to do with it. Is that you can't play. This is our BX. You can't PX. You can't play that music here. And then when I was down in Texas, um, I had an issue. With there were a number of individuals. I did my advanced training, my medic training down there, And there were a number of individuals who were from the southern states. Now, I will say this, that 75% of them I didn't have a problem with, but there were certain individuals. I was put into what they call a leadership training school. I became a squad leader.
Mm-hmm.
And there were several individuals who made it quite plain that they did not want to take orders from me. That was not what they were used to doing, and that was not going to happen. One to the point where, not to my face, but to other individuals, he made threats to me. And
How did you address that?
funny that you should ask.
Mm.
Um, I shared my room with a gentleman. Matter of fact, he was a distant cousin of Elvis Presley's.
Hmm.
And I told him one day, the young man was from Tennessee,
Mm-hmm.
and I told him, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to go over and tell him that you forgot something in the room and ask him to go pick it up for you. And he did.
Mm-hmm.
And the young man came in the room, and when he came into the room, I was sitting behind the door. So when he opened the door, he couldn't see me because I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want him to turn around and go in the other direction.
Mm-hmm.
And he came into the room, and I closed the door behind him, and I said, you and I have a problem, and we're going to solve this problem right now. And he, did the usual kind of, mumble, well, blah, 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 blah. I said, no, 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 no. We have a problem. You're going around telling people what you're going to do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to solve this.
Mm-hmm.
And we got into a heated discussion.
Mm.
Uh, and to be honest with you, deep down, I knew he wasn't going to do anything, but,
Mm-hmm.
you know, um, but the gist of it was that when he walked out of there, we didn't have a problem anymore.
The to be black and in the military, there are battles and that go on different levels. There's the one, the
Yes.
American government, but then there's the racism battle,
Yes.
and that's I can imagine extremely exhausting and frustrating. Eh, I remember, was it James Baldwin, the writer, who said, was it him who said that that he loves this country, but this country does not love him.
I believe it was him. I believe it was him.
And what is that like then? That experience of you join the
Well,
military.
it's interesting that you asked that question,
Mm,
because one of the problems that I had in staffing this panel was that there are a number of people who served in the military and were very proud to serve in the military, except for one problem.
mm,
They had to deal with a lot of the racism and things that you're talking about here. And
mhm.
as a result of it, when we think of PTSD, we think of combat issues,
Right.
people who went into combat and have dreams, etc. Well, I talked to a number of people who, when I asked about talking about their military careers,
Hmm.
told me flat out, I can't talk about it.
Mm.
It was so disturbing. I had one gentleman that told me that it took him almost 30 years to get over it. And I said, I think on a lot of them are, you just mentioned something in your quote that I think that's what part of the problem for some of these people is that they feel that this is their country. They're doing something which is protecting the country, which is in the benefit of the country. And then they're spat upon, they're stepped on, they're shunted in the wrong direction. So you can't help but feel like I'm trying to do something, and I'm not even treated as a human being. And yeah, one thing that I might mention too, and that a lot of people aren't aware, but as you're aware, that after the Second World War, especially in some of the southern states and a lot of other states too, that there were a number of lynchings, the number of lynchings, etc. Well, a good portion of these lynchings and stuff happened to Black veterans. And a lot of people attach that, behaviorists and things like that attach this to the fact that a number of people felt threatened that these individuals had gone and done something, and had developed thoughts about how they should proceed in the world,
Mm-hmm.
and that they wanted to make sure they got put back in their space. And that's one of the, again, that's some of the issues that a number of these gentlemen had. Was, I, like you say, I went out and I fought for my country, and my country doesn't even treat me right. Um, Now, I will say this, that the majority of people that are on the panel have felt that they were treated well, but they did know of events that they saw, that they were aware of, and some in some cases were involved in, that were just the opposite.
Why is it important for people to hear these stories from Black veterans?
Because I think that people, in my, and again, I'm only going to give you my opinion, okay, and I'm sure other people have their opinions regarding it. But my opinion is this, is that these individuals, and like I say, my father included, my uncles included, they fought for this country like anybody else, like everybody else. And they felt that this is their country. Um, and yet when they came back, they had issues. And I think that but I feel that it's important for people to understand that that as Black individuals, we have been a major part of this country. We've been in defense of this country. We've done things for the country, and I think it's important that people understand this. But at the same time, I think it's also very, very important that people feel, and I'm not just talking about Black individuals. I'm talking about all people of color. That people feel and understand that these people have feelings. They when you get hurt, you get hurt. It's not like somebody else gets hurt and they're in pain. We get hurt, we're in pain also.